So let me ask you a question that a lot of people quietly carry. What if your past is too messy for God to forgive? Maybe you've thought something like, if people knew everything I've done, they'd see me differently. And sometimes that leads to another thought. If people would struggle to forgive me, maybe God would too. But there's a story in the Bible that completely reframes that fear. And I think once you see it, it changes the way that you understand grace. You see, everyone carries regrets, things we wish we could undo, words that we wish we could take back, and decisions that hurt other people or even ourselves. And sometimes the hardest person to forgive is ourselves. And when guilt sticks around long enough, it starts whispering lies like, you've gone too far this time, you're too broken, you had your chance. But the message of Christianity begins with a completely different idea, that none of us are perfect. In Romans 3:23, it says, all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God, which means every person who has ever followed God started from the same place, a place of brokenness. One of the clearest examples is the Apostle Peter. Peter was one of Jesus' closest followers. But on the night Jesus was arrested, something happened. Peter panicked. And 3 different times, people asked if he knew Jesus. And 3 different times, Peter denied it. And he denied it publicly. Imagine how heavy that must have felt. Peter had promised loyalty, but when it mattered most, he failed. And if anyone might have thought their past disqualified them, it was Peter. But after the resurrection, Jesus meets Peter again. This moment is recorded in John 21. And instead of rejecting Peter, Jesus asks him a question 3 times. Do you love me? 3 denials, 3 restorations. Jesus doesn't shame him, he restores him, and then something surprising happens. Jesus gives Peter a mission. The man who failed publicly becomes one of the leaders of the early church, which reveals something powerful. Failure wasn't the end of Peter's story. Forgiveness in the Bible isn't pretending something didn't happen. It's releasing the debt. In 1 John 1:9, it says, if we confess our sins, he is faithful and just to forgive us and cleanse us from all unrighteousness. Notice that word, all. Not some, not those smaller sins and mistakes, all. God's forgiveness is not based on how good we are, it's based on what Christ has done. The reason forgiveness is possible is because of the cross. Jesus took the weight of sin upon himself. The punishment humanity deserved was placed on him. That's why grace is such a radical idea. Grace means you receive something you didn't earn. Forgiveness means your worst moments do not define your future. Sometimes the hardest part isn't believing God can forgive, it's believing that he can forgive us. We compare ourselves to others. We replay our failures, but the story of the Bible keeps repeating the same thing. God specializes in restoring broken people. Moses had a violent past. David committed serious sin. Paul persecuted Christians, yet God used all of them. So can God forgive your past? Yes. Not because your past isn't real, but because grace is much bigger. The question isn't whether God is willing to forgive. The question is whether we are willing to receive it. Because the story of Christianity isn't about perfect people. It's about forgiven people learning to live differently. And if God restored Peter, there's hope for your story too. And if this video encouraged you, subscribe and drop your questions below. I'd love to keep exploring them with you. Because the message of Jesus has always been this: your past may shape your story, but it doesn't have to define your future.